means we're recording.
Okay. You should do it after, too. So we'll say...
After what?
This is Chris. No, it's... This is Chris. No, you say, this is Kayla. Have you not done this before?
I've never done this before. Go again.
This is Chris.
This is Kayla.
And this is Cult or Just Weird. There we go. That's where the little chime comes in. And see, now what we do is, I learned recently those are called mnemonic devices, or mnemonic...
What is?
Chimes or something? I don't know. It's like the NBC chime or like the Intel dun dun dun. Like you always know, you always associate that. Like if you ever heard the Intel chime, like totally, you could be in the middle of the ocean, you hear that and you're like, oh, that's Intel.
Right. It's like there's an entire plot point in Jurassic Park 3 of this.
I don't know that I think I missed that one.
We need to stop recording and we need to go watch it right now. It's the best.
JP3, seriously?
The second of all of the Jurassic Parks, it is the second best.
Do you have like an unstated goal that you want to mention Jurassic Park, some Jurassic Park movie in all of these?
I'll state the goal. I want to be able to talk about Jurassic Park as often as possible, including on every episode of any podcast I ever appear on. Also, we should go watch Jurassic Park 3 after this, and then you'll understand
Great.
How what you just said is very relevant to the plot of that film.
Well, I totally can wait for that. It's
so good. William H. Macy's in it. Téa Leoni's in it.
All right.
Sam Neill's in it.
Oh,
Laura
maybe
Dern's
I
in
did
it.
see that one.
It's the one with the pterodactyls. So there's a little kid. It's great. There's a divorce drama
it's
happening.
Not ringing a bell.
Ugh.
Anyway, welcome to the show.
Welcome to Culture Just Weird. You already said that.
Yeah, we did, but I just wanted to say it again because I like repeating things. And this week I picked a bit of a lighter topic.
Yeah, if you're joining us, you're joining us after our first ever two-parter on the illustrious Teal Swan, and it was a little heavy, that topic.
Yeah.
It made me literally. I changed every single topic that I had in my lineup after that because of the heaviness and the weightiness and the depth and the girth of that episode.
It was a very girthy episode.
It was a girthy episode. I needed to change what I did after. And actually, that brings me to something that I have forgotten to do for the last 6 episodes. I have yet to say thank you to our producer Alyssa, who is my co-host on my other podcast and a very dear friend, who basically has made sure that our topics mesh.
But mostly she's a ruthless producer, though. I mean, she really
ruthless,
cracks that whip.
Yes.
But if you need your podcast to get things done, I mean,
get Alyssa on board.
She's your go-to there. Thank
you, Alyssa, for keeping us in line and for making sure our topics don't suck.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I probably should have checked this with you ahead of time, producer, if you're listening to this right now.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
I also switched my topic, which was sort of based on last week's being so heavy, but also, no spoilers or anything, but I am, the upcoming few topics I have after this one have some interesting things afoot. So, yeah. So it's actually...
None of mine do.
I needed the time anyway.
Gotcha. Okay.
So...
God damn it. Fucking raising the bar. That means I'm going to have to do shit.
Raising that bar. Don't worry. It's not raising it that much.
You don't understand. For the last 1.5 years of my life, I have done a podcast where I can do my quote-unquote research an hour before we record. And now you have thrust me into this world where I need to do interviews and reach out to people and have supplemental material.
Look, I hate doing this podcast too, but now we're doing it because now we have throngs of devoted fans.
Ugh. God damn it.
And now we have to keep doing it. So sit here and fucking suffer with me for the next
rest of our lives.
Hopefully not 2 hours. I don't know how long this one's going to be actually.
Oh,
I'm going to try to get through it. Yeah, okay. I'm going to try to power through it. No, so actually it's, if we're getting into it.
Are we getting into it? Do you have any business?
No particularly pressing business other than this content, no.
Okay, good. Let's do this.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
I am too. Yeah, so like I said, little bit lighter this week. Certainly interesting. I thought it was going to be okay, a little bit of... Actually, I wasn't even sure I'd be able to get a full episode out of it. And then as you do... You look into this stuff and then you're like, oh, snap. Oh, there's a lot of information that I had no idea.
Right.
So first off, I would like to cite my sources here because I think that's a good thing to do that we've done in the previous few episodes. Unfortunately for this one, I was not able to secure an interview or involve myself with the group in any way like I was able to do with Star Citizen.
That's okay.
So mostly I'm just going to be lazily aggregating information from a whole bunch of secondary sources.
That's what about 99% of podcasts are, so you're good.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what the internet is, right? I mean, it's all aggregators. That's what
There's
BuzzFeed
nothing
is.
new on the internet. It's just everybody is just like, what is the word?
Aggregating?
No, a different word for aggregating.
Stealing?
Sure. Everyone's just stealing content from one platform to another platform, and it's just going around and around in a circle. So it's
circle jerking.
Something you see on Tumblr has been screenshotted from something you saw on Twitter, which was screenshotted from something you saw on Reddit, which is screenshotted from something you saw on Tumblr. So
right. Wow.
So that's our podcast.
That's dire. Anyway, so we are very much a part of that whole cycle. I should have just had you like in that circle thing you just were talking about.
Name your sources.
I should have just had you name the sources, but instead I'm going to do it. So Wikipedia, obviously. I also read an article written by what appeared to be a San Jose State University student. It was like on a GeoCities looking website, though. It was pretty weird. I don't know. I didn't use that much of that one. Anyway, an article from good old Slate. An article from Smithsonian Magazine. Very fancy. Our good friends at Atlas Obscura. They're great. I also read a transcript of a podcast episode from 2010.
What?
A podcast called Skeptoid. And I'm not sure if they're still publishing or not, but it was pretty cool.
Okay.
An article from Scientific American from 50 years ago.
I hate this.
And an article written for Topic Magazine, who I had never heard of before, but they actually proved to be extremely valuable.
Wait, the magazine is called Topic?
Topic. Or it's just topic.com. I don't know.
That's literally like prop magazine.
Yeah,
like,
it's great.
Like, what's the name of a magazine we can have that's clearable and doesn't really say what it's about? Topic.
What's the topic? Topic. Regarding this Scientific American article from 50 years ago thing, so that's actually something they do in every issue. Is they have a page that they call like 550 100 or something. I forget what it's called exactly, but it's what they do is they actually take them because they've been in print for so freaking long.
Right. They
go into their own archives and they pick an article from 5 years ago, 50 years ago, and 100 years ago, and they republish it.
So they aggregate themselves.
Yeah, and usually it's pretty short, but this one was long. This was like a legit full-length article from 50 years ago.
Okay, what is this topic? I need to know.
You will find out.
Oh, God.
So today the format will be slightly different.
Okay.
Rather than just one cult, this is the tale of two cults.
I don't know if that's allowed.
Well, I did it.
Ooh, Alyssa's gonna yell at you.
I know. That's okay. So, sorry, producer. Please don't, producer, fire me. Allow me to set the table. Then you can tell me if you think you know which organizations I'm talking about. The first group is an established part of modern society. It provides social glue to the community or communities in which it exists, including all of the trappings: comradeship, comfort, wisdom, culture. Originally born with what you could call a revolutionary figure, it has since evolved into a stable group with a hierarchy and everything. It provides a unifying purpose to its members and includes holidays, and it's enough a part of this society that it is even involved in the government.
It's either McDonald's or the YMCA.
It has an established mythology
Those are the only
that,
two options.
While supernatural, is more or less self-consistent. So your ideas are YMCA or McDonald's.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what it sounds like. You kind of can. I mean, revolutionary figure it started with, part of modern society.
You're gonna make me look real dumb.
No,
today.
I'm not. Well, let's go on to the second group.
Are you just doing the country of the United States of America?
No, I mean, to me that sounds an awful lot like Christianity, doesn't it? But now you obviously know that that's like the trick, is that it's not going to be that, right?
It's McDonald's or the YMCA.
Well, let's go on to the second group. So the second group is quite superstitious, and it began with a figure about whom very little is known outside of the religious literature about him. And some folks who study this stuff believe that he may not even have existed. Rituals are held in which thanks is given to this figure, a savior, and his return is prophesied, which also heralds the end times and rewards the faithful that, believed in him that whole time.
Right.
These rituals, though, are really where the superstition kicks in. Ceremonies are held, and it is believed that these ritual ceremonies will bring rewards to the adherents. And in fact, this group is pretty well known for the rituals that they perform. Any ideas for number 2?
Is it McDonald's versus the YMCA? I honestly have no idea. I'm a couple healthy pours of wine in. I don't know.
Yeah, I love how you're just drinking wine while we're at work here.
I don't get paid, so it's not work.
It looks like you're getting paid in wine to me.
That's true. Can I get any other hints?
Well, I didn't write any other hints down, so no.
Just tell me hints.
I can't improv like that. That's too much.
All right, so the first one has ritual and a charismatic leader, and the second one has ritual and a charismatic leader. That's literally
right, but
anything.
the first one is well-established, modern society. The second one is superstitious and kind of crazy and
chiropractics.
magical.
I don't know. Chiropractics versus medical establishment.
Well, as we said a minute ago, the idea is that I'm
right.
Is it a...
How do
it sounds so Christianity,
yeah,
right?
You're talking about Jesus and you're talking about...
Right, so, haha, trick, surprise, surprise, it's not actually that.
I'm sorry, did I ruin your thing?
No,
by saying McDonald's.
You got it, it was McDonald's. No, if you had gotten it, I would have told you. But, so for group number 2...
Right.
Remember I mentioned that the group is well known for their rituals.
Yes.
So, if I'm a little more specific about these rituals, you might start to guess what I'm talking about.
Do it. Go.
First of all, I guess these are the hints you just asked for,
yes.
so maybe I did write
Give
these down.
Give me some hints.
First of all, there are actually many of these groups, or at least there were. Now there are only a few, but there used to be many that sprung up throughout the islands of the Pacific Ocean, just before and after World War II.
Bro, I have no idea.
The rituals involve mimicking the trappings of Western technology, particularly military technology, and also mimicking Western ceremonies. The ritual performers believe that by building faux headsets and faux landing strips and making fake rifles and raising American flags in a ceremony where they march in formation, they will be rewarded with material wealth.
Are these historical reenactors?
No. In fact, they are today's topic, cargo cults.
Oh my god, cargo cults are on my list!
All right, so this is pause.
No, cargo, not one that I've submitted for approval from Alyssa, but on my initial list.
Yeah.
Totally had cargo cults on there.
Like the Word document?
No, on my my short list.
Oh, on the things you wanted to submit to Alyssa.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Now I don't have to fucking research about it. Oh my god, I'm so excited.
Yes, so that's group 2. Don't worry, I will tell you who group 1 is in a little bit when we use it as a measuring stick against group number 2.
Oh my god, I am so excited you're doing this one.
Yeah, me too. It's actually really fascinating. It really is. So for now, though, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about cargo cults. Now, I know I'm saying cults with an S, but I also said I was talking about a specific group in my Tale of Two Cults. So let me explain that. As I just mentioned, during the period just before and after, and of course during the Second World War, many such cargo cults popped up all across the Pacific Islands, essentially anywhere that culture shock occurred between island communities with little in the way of technology and either Western or Japanese occupation. And in the future, I'm probably just going to say Western occupation and lump Japanese occupation in with that, because by the time of World War II, the Japanese style imperial colonialism had a lot in common with European colonialism.
Could you just say colonial occupation?
I could, but there's also, it's not just that, it's also the style.
Okay.
There's been a lot of colonialism has been a part of history throughout throughout human history, right? But there's a very particular flavor that European colonialism carries with it.
Right. And
the Japanese style colonialism was very similar to that during the World War II era.
Good to know.
So these Westerners, these visitors and administrators and colonialists brought with them vast amounts of material wealth, only possible with a gigantic modern economy. So infrastructure, manufacturing, technology, all that stuff. Also, many of these island societies had a few things that were true about them. First, they were far too small and too isolated to have developed a gigantic economy that we just talked about. And secondly, many of them had a societal structure that was actually built around being able to provide material well-being to one another. According to my research, in many South Pacific cultures, the more indebted someone was to you, the more powerful you were. So, when a seemingly never-ending stream of material wealth is being injected into your tiny Pacific island, suddenly even the most powerful chieftain feels completely powerless, needing to grasp for that power and agency and unable to even conceive of how ordinary humans could, with their two hands, possibly produce such massive material wealth. Many of these island societies attempted to just match the rituals that the Westerners performed, assuming that correlation implied causality, as long as they had the airstrips and the marches and whatever, that, okay, that means that we can have that wealth too.
Right. So basically what you're saying is that people who had not been exposed to quote unquote Western technology saw Western technology in action in form of
yes,
planes flying in with equipment and people with ships bringing in, and then military stuff happening. And instead of going one follows the other, it was right,
Basically,
reversed.
what they would do is they would see okay, this person, actually, this is something I didn't have in my notes, but I'm glad you brought that up, because they would see I'm working super hard and all I can produce is a few potatoes or whatever. Right. I don't know what they actually farm out there. It's definitely not potatoes. I'm sorry, I'm probably racist. But, they're not producing that much with their own two hands because there's only so much you can do.
Right.
And then, Bob over there, who's in his, radar tower, because
Bob from the
United States, who's, a Navy airman, he just writes something on a little piece of paper, does almost no work. And then massive, more than you've ever seen material wealth just comes in from that.
Right.
And so they say, okay, well, obviously, we're doing it wrong, so let's do it that way.
Right.
And it wasn't just we want more wealth. It was also I feel disempowered.
Okay.
Right. So in some form of this happened many times throughout the Pacific Islands during the mid 20th century. Swinging all the way back to that initial tale of two cults, though, my research actually led me down the path of what appeared to me the most widely documented cargo cult, the cult of John Frum. So let me recite the tale of two cargo cults from earlier just one more time here to
Please do.
Catch us up. The second group is quite superstitious. It began with a figure about whom very little is known, outside of the religious literature about him, and some folks who study this stuff believe he may not even have existed. Rituals are held in which thanks is given to this figure, who is a savior, and his return is prophesied, which also heralds the end times and rewards for the faithful. These rituals are really where the superstition kicks in. Ceremonies are held, and it is believed that these ritual ceremonies will bring rewards to the adherents. And in fact, this group is pretty well known for the rituals they perform. So specifically talking about the John Frum cult there.
Right.
So that's why I said, okay, we're talking about one thing, but there's a bunch of them. So there's a bunch of them, but we're honing in on this one as an example because there's the most literature about it.
Okay.
So I talked a little bit about the rituals performed by cargo cults, and the John Frum cult is no exception. Every year on February 15th, so happy birthday to you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, thanks.
Which is John Frum Day. Adherents dress in American military garb. They carry around fake rifles made of bamboo and perform military ceremonies, including a raising of the American flag. This is accompanied by a larger celebration involving speeches, dancing, and feasting, but it's the cargo rituals for which they are most well known. What about John Frum himself?
Yeah, who's John Frum? Explain to me who John Frum is.
Well, as I mentioned, and yes, I highlighted this on purpose to draw those Christ-like parallels, he is considered a savior figure, up to and including a prophesied return sometime in the future.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Members of this quote-unquote cult believe in a strange amalgamation about John. He is divine and has supernatural powers, but he is also an American human. The divine-human dichotomy, again, also very similar to Jesus.
Right. That is true.
As an American, he lives in America, but he is also said to reside in the volcano on the island where he is worshipped.
Okay, this dude sounds fucking cool.
Yeah, he's baller. It's really weird.
No, I'm into him.
Oh, yeah, you'll be even more into him. Just wait.
Do you got pics?
No one has pics of John Frum, I'm sorry to say.
That makes him that much more attractive.
Yeah, I know. Believers say that he will bring Western goods in the form of cargo, and they themselves, the believers, actually use the word cargo. So they've picked up a lot of like English words into their own language just from the time that the Americans were there.
Do you have any idea, like, specifics about the, like, peoples that you're talking about? Like, do you know what island we're talking about? What group we're talking about?
Oh, to use our favorite term on this podcast, we'll get to it.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we weren't being, like, totally just white people racist, being like, yeah, those people over there.
Oh my God. Kayla.
Yeah. I called you racist. Because we're white.
Right, so I'm allowed to be racist.
No, you're not allowed.
The end.
You're not allowed.
Are we cutting this whole thing about
Probably.
our own racism?
I just wanted to make sure, in case it was an oversight.
Thank you. Where was I? Oh, yeah, and they themselves actually use the word cargo, so it's like they've picked up a lot of English words from when Americans were occupying. Or, I guess the Americans weren't occupying, They were there. They were there, like, doing hey, we're just passing through with all of our military stuff, but they weren't like colonizing it. Anyway, but they also believe that he supports local customs.
Okay.
Some say he was a Black American soldier. Others say he was white. It is a little tough to wrap your head around exactly who he is or was, because there are a lot of these confusing and contradictory stories about him. There just seem to be a lot of different stories about his origin.
Okay.
So where did his persona come from? Oh, get it from?
Gross. Just keep going.
Well, the first theory is easy. You might have kind of gotten it just from the name. I'm John from America.
John Frum.
Got shortened and transformed into John Frum.
Oh, I like that.
But as I'll get into in a second here.
How do you spell Frum?
That is not the only theory, or even maybe the most likely one.
How do you spell Frum?
Most places, I think there's no, like, this is how you spell it, because it's not an English word.
Okay.
And I saw it spelled different ways, but by far the most common way in all of the English language articles that I read was F-R-U-M.
That's what I would have expected.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we've got something to delve into here with Mr. Frum.
Yeah. So let's talk about that measuring stick. That was the cult of John Frum. Now let's compare and contrast. And I will jump all the way back to the Tale of Two Cults again, only this time I'll repeat the description from the first group. The first group is an established part of modern society. It provides social glue to the community, or communities in which it exists, including all the trappings, comradeship, comfort, wisdom, culture. Originally born with what you would call a revolutionary figure, it has since evolved into a stable group with a hierarchy and everything. It provides a unifying purpose to its members and includes holidays. It is enough a part of the society that is involved in the government. It has an established mythology that, while supernatural, is more or less self-consistent.
Are you talking about...
So which religion do you think I'm going to be using here to draw comparisons?
I don't know, but are you talking about capitalism? That was capitalism.
Actually, sort of.
Is capitalism a cargo cult?
Okay, now you're getting ahead of me.
Oh my God. Go. Get us there.
So I was lying. The two cults are one and the same.
Oh, what?
Whoa, crazy. I know. Like,
I had no idea.
90% of our listeners right now are like, oh my God, that was so obvious. You're such a gimmick.
Oh, I had no idea. I thought it was McDonald's in the YMCA.
No, I'm close though. You were close. Like, you're only about 7,000 miles off.
Yeah.
But before I talk about the specifics of that description,
okay,
the thing I just read, and why I tried to do that little trickery there, let's talk a little bit about the sociocultural context under which we discover, study, and talk about cargo cults. I can't really say it better than this quote from Topic.com's Who is John Frum article, so I will read it verbatim.
That's fine. That's 99% of what I do on my other podcast. I just read articles.
I mean, we said we were just stealing shit. We're just recycling everything on the internet.
We're aggregating the aggregators who are aggregating themselves.
Yeah, and as long as we admit it, everything's fine.
Yep.
Quote, Lamont Lindstrom, a professor of anthropology at the University of Tulsa, has been studying the phenomenon of cargo cults, as well as the related phenomenon of how outsiders react to them, since his first visit to Tanna. So Tanna is actually the name of the island that I have not mentioned yet because it was in a later section, but I forgot it was mentioned here, in the 1970s. So he first visited Tanna in the 1970s.
Okay.
He argues that the term has become one of his fields, and so he's a professor of anthropology. That's not a niche field. That's anthropology.
Right.
He argues that the term has become one of his field's most persistent legacies, on par with concepts such as worldview, socialization, culture, and rite of passage.
What?
He argues that the term cargo cult is on par with those concepts. In a 2013 paper, he sums up the various kinds of symbolic roles we have assigned to those who believe in John Frum and his brethren. Quote, so now this is quote within a quote, because the article is talking about this guy, now this guy's talking. Cargo cultists, and this is him, and even more meta, sorry. This is him, like, saying what we bring to it. This is not him saying this.
Okay.
Cargo cultists are misguided, even stupid nitwits who are deluded by irrational thinking and overblown desire. Or cargo cultists are gallant rebels, cultural critics even, who scorn and reveal the dull, soul-numbing lessons of our consumerist modernity. He continues, the term, as a metaphor, functions as a barely disguised model of Western desire itself, although a desire that is displaced onto Melanesia. Cargo cult is a just so story about our peculiarly modern mode of desiring that is always ultimately unrequited, unquenchable, and never-ending. End quote.
Capitalism is a cargo cult, is what he just said there.
Pretty much.
Damn! I can't... We have to stop recording. I can't have my entire worldview uprooted and upheaved every 2 weeks.
I'm sorry. We can go back to talking about suicide.
No, please go.
So, how much does the cargo cult research, up to and including the entire first part of this podcast,
right,
say about the actual cults, and how much does it say about us? For what it's worth, another sociologist that I read about also mentioned that the phenomenon of primitive, idyllic cultures literally worshipping American goods and American personages is flattering, in a word.
Sure.
It's a story that is both interesting and also makes you go, oh, we are great. Yeah, that's awesome.
Right. Like, it definitely, I was a little uncomfortable when this episode started because I was like, oh, this feels kind of icky. Like, it feels kind of icky to be, like, talking about this nameless other being like, oh, they don't know anything about Western culture and they're just, like, worshiping it. You know what I mean? Like, it can feel a little icky at first blush.
So you're saying that my structure basically totally worked on you?
Yes, absolutely. 100%. 115%.
Wow. You're just like, I can just lead you like I can just put like a carrot, attach a carrot to a horse's head and just have him,
horse's head?
How does that work? What's it?
I don't know if attaching a carrot to a horse's head is going to get me to go anywhere. But if you want to attach a carrot to a stick and dangle it in front of my face...
Yeah, there we go. Carrot on stick in front of face.
Yeah, I'm not going to follow a horse's carrot. That's weird.
Anyway, the thing is, though, the John Frum cult is real. So it's not like these things don't exist. It's not like these rituals aren't actually happening. It's not like they aren't actually raising American flags and doing these ceremonies. So let's talk a little bit more about that. A lot of these so-called cargo cults across the Pacific have waned and disappeared as it became more and more apparent that cargo was never getting dropped.
Right.
Like, you can only do that so long when you're like, I guess it's gone. Right?
That makes me sad.
Yeah, me too. But maybe they're better off. I don't know. But maybe not, as we'll talk about. So why do people still believe in Mr. Frum on his island? Well, my friend, that is what brings us back to that description that we opened the episode with. This group is not just a bunch of, air quote, primitives doing misguided mimicry rituals. It has a mythology, holy locations, a succession of spiritual leaders, and is a very real chunk of social glue for the people on the island of Tanna. Let's talk a little bit about that place to see how the John Frum cult came into existence and turned it into what it is today.
All right.
Because you think, and this is just me going off script here, off my own script, but, you know, if you know anything about cargo cults, or if you've heard about them before, really all you ever hear about them is like, oh, interesting, like, people build landing strips thinking that that's what makes the cargo come from. Like, oh, cool. But when I really read about this John Frum cult, it's so much more than that you never, ever hear about.
I'm shocked already, and I don't even know what you're going to say. So
the island of Tanna is part of an island chain called Vanuatu. Sorry, it's a chain nation. I think the nation is called Vanuatu. I'm not sure if the islands as a whole, as a group, are called that.
Okay.
I think it's a shit ton of islands. It's like 30 or 40 or something.
Oh, jeez.
And this is in the South Pacific. I want to say it's like off the northeastern. I looked this up and I forget now because the Pacific's a big place, but it's like off the northeastern coast of Australia, like 1,000 miles out or something like that.
Right.
But back in the day, they were called the New Hebrides. You may remember the Hebrides as islands we visited off the Atlantic side of Scotland.
You and me?
Yeah.
We visited a place called the Hebrides?
All of those islands we visited were called the Hebrides.
What?
Yeah.
Where? What islands?
Like Skye. Remember we went to Skye?
Those are called the Hebrides. No one, not a single person told me that. How was I supposed to know?
We totally did. Oh my God. Paul is going to be really upset with you.
Well, Paul, I didn't hear you.
Well, anyway,
I
all of those
I wasn't listening
islands,
very well for an entire 2 weeks.
Collectively,
I was not paying attention.
Wow. So that's great.
Now I know.
I'm glad you got value out of that trip.
I did.
Yeah, so all of those islands in the upper part of the British Isle, the north western side of the island are called the Hebrides collectively.
Okay, good. I'm glad I'm finding this out after the fact.
So bringing it back to thousands and thousands of miles away, these islands were called by their colonialists the New Hebrides.
Okay.
So right, this was going to work a little bit better. I was going to be like, oh, so what does that say that if they're named after something in Scotland, well, that means that they're a colony. Whoa, but whatever. That's a little bit
But I'm stupid and I ruined it, is what you're saying.
I wouldn't say stupid. I would say
inattentive.
Yeah, inattentive, ignorant,
just dumb.
No, you're none of those things. We learned a lot. I mean, we were also drinking a lot of scotch, so I mean,
I'll blame it on the scotch.
Yeah, do that. So actually, these islands were technically joint managed by the British and the French because somehow they couldn't figure out which one of them had the claim to it or something. I don't know. Not super important.
Okay.
But what is important is, well, one of the well-known aspects of European-style colonialism that I mentioned before is the spreading of the Christian religion and Western customs with natives encountered in colonial lands. So natives in these lands, New Hebrides included, tend to, well, already have a culture there.
Right.
In the case of Tanna Island, they refer to this cultural heritage as Kastom, Kastom, and it covers pretty much the entire range of culture. So marriages, dances, food, even a preferred psychoactive substance that they use there called kava.
Oh!
Yeah.
I've heard of kava.
I feel like I had heard of kava
that's
too.
That's the only thing that I've heard of. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
you've heard of the
Western
drug.
culture.
Good job.
Oh, fuck.
Wow.
That's because I wanted to take you to, there's a kava bar down in Orange County that I want to take you to.
You did tell me about that.
Yeah.
Oh, we're definitely going after this episode. Now. Well, yeah, so they really dig kava there, apparently.
All right. Good to know.
So as in the common colonialism story elsewhere, these natives felt like their agency and identity were being stripped from them. Into this scenario entered John Frum. And notice, if you will, that I haven't mentioned World War II yet.
You have not.
According to at least one Tanna Islander, just before the war came to the Pacific, a man calling himself John from America visited the island, bringing his very Christ-like messages of, renewal and believing in me and I shall return, that kind of stuff. And the savior figure did indeed promise material rewards for being faithful.
Okay.
Such as the cargo, right? That was definitely a part of it.
Right.
But that was far from his primary message. In fact, the most important part of the message was one of resisting their colonial occupation, and specifically of rejecting the Western culture that was being enforced, and to re-embrace their own customs, i.e. custom. And these days, even the cargo message is interpreted as meaning that self-renewal brings fulfillment and success. So these days, they talk about the cargo more as a metaphor. And now again, remember, this is the only cargo cult, or one of the only ones that's still around. So if you're trying to decide why is it still around, this is why, right?
My mind is blown.
Yeah.
What is happening?
So a lot of the adherents believe it almost more as metaphor that, like, you know, John Frum said he would bring us material wealth.
Right.
And we didn't get cargo, but like today my son is studying to become a lawyer and my daughter is studying to become a doctor.
Right, right.
So did that not happen?
This is...
So I'd like to quote that topic article again here. In Wellll's telling, and Wellll's, I believe that... Oh, I should have looked this up. So they have like a guy whose title that I don't quite remember, and I didn't write down because I'm delinquent. But it's like he's basically like their religious leader of the cult.
Okay.
And I believe that that's this guy Wellll. So in Wellll's telling, John Frum had nothing to do with an imposed cargo cult narrative of sitting around waiting for outside help to arrive.
Okay.
Instead, he had come to symbolize all custom on Tanna, all the stones and spirits and living traditions. They used the John to bring it all together. John was an emblem not of external transformation, but of becoming more yourself.
This is not capitalism.
Cargo cult. It was people waiting around on a totally superstitious, this isn't real airstrip.
Right.
Or is it a story of a savior figure coming in, an American, no doubt. That's how they conceive of it. That's all the rituals are all about that. But saying not like, get the capitalism stuff. Instead saying, if you go here and ask these people, they would say, no, it's not about the cargo. It's about renewal. It's about self-renewal. And in fact, as a part of a little side rabbit hole I went down on this, there's actually a term for it called, I believe, like spiritual renewal. And there's these basically renewal processes that happen. And I think it frequently happens when there is some culture shock going on or like power dynamics like there is with colonialism.
Right.
And it will trigger this sense of like, oh, like, you know, there's a spiritual leader that then promises that the future will be better if you do X, Y, Z. And then that leads to like a transformative sort of social situation. And like, and again, not to go back to the parallels with Christianity, but like literally that's what was happening with Christianity. Right. You have this massively powerful Roman Empire, and then you have this less powerful Jewish people, and this figure appears within that community to say like, hey, there's going to be a renewal. Right. And so this is exactly what John Frum was like. So this is not really a question. I'm going to start this again, in fact, because it's definitely not a question.
Answer.
Did you know that the word Frum in the Tannese language sounds like a word that means broom?
Broom?
Broom. Like, you know, what you sweep with.
John Broom.
So at least one islander believes, and this is, again, there are many theories, so this is just some people believe this, but at least one islander believes that John Frum doesn't mean John from America. They still conceive him as an American, but that's not where the word comes from.
Okay.
To him, the word comes from the word for broom in Tannese. So it's not John from America, but John the broom come to sweep away the oppressors.
I don't even know what to say, honestly. Like,
now again, there's like 8 different theories about who John Frum is, and that's only one of them. But
you're going to get very little banter from me on this because I knew very little about cargo cults going into this, and this has just cracked my mind egg wide open. It is frying on the pan.
Well, I'm going to flip it over and fry it just a little more frying, so just sit tight. One of the anthropological theories, of course, is that he didn't even exist, which to me seems likely.
Right.
And that he's just an amalgamation of American soldiers who did in fact come to Tanna in droves during World War II, and who were like generally, you know, generous and whatever with the locals. But the Tannese also saw both white and black soldiers standing on equal ground and partaking of the fantastical material wealth that they had never seen before, and this essentially seeded them with the idea that they could aspire to the same.
It's really interesting that you say that because, again, I know very little about history in general. And I don't know how like intra-military relations played out overseas.
I don't either.
I do know that the American military was still segregated.
Yeah, I know that they had a lot of segregation still going on with like the Tuskegee Airmen and all that stuff.
Right, and there was hierarchies and stuff. So it's interesting to hear that in other places that may not have been how it actually played out.
So I didn't do enough research on this to like say definitively. So this is just going to be a speculation time for me. But I speculate that there's sort of two aspects here. One is that I'm sure there was still plenty of discrimination as compared to what we would think.
Sure.
But from the eyes of a Tanese person who had been suffering under the heel of colonialism and such a distinct hierarchy between like all of their colonial masters who were white,
right,
and them who were not, I think to them they probably wouldn't have noticed as much. To them it would have seemed equal.
Right. Okay.
And then I also have to imagine that like, and this is really speculation realm for me because I've never been in the military and I don't know much about it, but I'm assuming that less like in the field, like on the foot soldier level, there was probably more comradeship than discrimination. Right. Like, and the discrimination was more on like a structural level.
Right. I can't speak specifically to like race relations, but I can say like with a high level of confidence that like queerness in the military, even at the time, was like not necessarily like overlooked, but just kind of like if you're in the field, if you're in the middle of war, like
if you're with me in a foxhole, then
you stop caring about who's gay, who's straight, and like like there's beautiful stories of like, you know, soldiers dying in each other's arms, like like male soldiers who are lovers dying in each other's arms, and they're like, what is it? They're military brethren. Like, what is the correct term?
Band of brothers?
They're colleagues? I don't know. Like, making sure to, like, keep them safe in those moments. Like, those kinds of things sometimes, not always, go out the window a little bit. Yeah.
My understanding is that, like, the, like, bond of brothership that you have during, especially, like, active wartime is, like, one of the strongest, like, interpersonal bonds that can be made.
Right.
Which to me would supersede probably at least at that ground level, supersede things like racial and sexual orientation divides, things like that.
And probably not always, but certainly to a great enough degree that you and I can understand why a group of people might look at black and white military men from America and go like, oh, equal footing.
Yeah, I mean, even like let's just, you know, let's say there was a mess hall, and in the mess hall, you know, there was I'm just again speculation, this may not have been true, but if there was like, you know, the black table and the white table, like to us that feels like discrimination, and it is. But to the Tanese, they might look at that and say, wow, look at those black people getting to eat at the same time all the same food. Like, why can't we do that? Right. So it's some of it's relative, unfortunately. So yeah, so that was, and that's only one theory, of course, too. But one of the theories is that was something that inspired them to action.
Okay.
And that's part of why maybe one of the versions of John Frum is imagined as a black person.
Right.
So yeah, cargo cults are definitely weird.
Is that the end?
That's the end. Cargo cults are weird. The end. But they're out of the ordinary. They definitely involve a style of ritual that Western people find curious.
Right.
But at least in the case of the cult of John Frum, it is also an integral and healthy part of the society in which it operates. It's not like we're immune to it either in the West, right? Like, far from it. Look no further than the anti-vax movement, right? The anti-vax movement is totally based on spurious correlation.
Right.
It's like, if X, then Y, so better not do X anymore. Or even like less annoying things than anti-vax, right? So, for example, did you know that there's absolutely no correlation between eating and getting cramps when swimming right after?
I did know that. I also know...
I wish that you didn't, because then that would have been so dramatic.
Sorry, I did know that. I also know that, like, going out with wet hair is not going to make you catch a cold. Mm-hmm. Those kinds of things. They're just, like, myths. Sorry that I
actually read a bunch of those. If you want a detour, I also read that that cracking your knuckles does not actually cause arthritis.
I knew that, and that's why I let you crack mine sometimes. It just hurts.
Oh God, we have to cut that because my parents are gonna be really upset with me.
What? That you crack my knuckles?
Yeah, please cut this part.
Please save me.
No, And then the thing that really blew my mind, and
God.
this is like kind of way off track, but I was like trying to look up things that were like, what are things that people think that aren't true? Did you know, this is actually going to be the most mind-blowing thing in the whole episode.
I don't want to hear it. Please don't say it.
Did you know that the word irregardless is a real word in the dictionary?
Do you want me to say no?
Oh my God, did you know that?
I'm on Twitter too much, dog.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Let's just cut this whole thing.
I mean, okay.
I was actually going to save and tell you that afterward. I wasn't even going to tell you on the show.
It blew my mind when I found that out.
Okay. Thank you.
It's insane.
Right? I read that and I was like, nope, not real. This cannot be real. And I looked it up and I was like, I'm in a Mandela universe.
And doesn't it mean the same thing as regardless?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it is, from what I read, it's like frowned upon usage because of the structure.
Right.
Because regardless means without regard, and then irregardless means not without regard.
Right.
But instead it actually means the same thing, which is without regard, which is so it's basically should not be used because it's confusing.
Okay. Yeah. But it is mind-blowing.
But if you use it, it's technically correct.
That word is in the dictionary, meaning the thing that everyone's like, you're not supposed to say, and you're correct.
It's messed up, and I don't like it, and I'm pretty sure that I'm like...
You're in the Mandela universe.
I'm in the Mandela universe, the Berenstain Bears, and everything else.
Berenstain.
But yeah, so going back to what I was talking about, we in the West do this stuff too. I mean, do athletes know that all the little lucky charms and rituals that they do don't actually affect the outcome of the game?
Like when that guy on the Seattle basketball team... What is the Seattle basketball team?
Well, there is none now. But the Supersonics?
I guess. He thought that if he rubbed Niles' head... that
was in the 90s, and they talked about the Sonics on that show a lot. Yeah, I mean, that's a common thing, right?
We're talking about Frasier, FYI, just in case you didn't catch
Frasier
it.
And Niles, yeah. And yet, perhaps the rituals put these athletes in the right frame of mind to go out in the field.
Right.
And do what they need to do.
It's why The Secret is real.
In that sense, I'd say we maybe actually have a lot in common with the cargo cult on the island of Tana.
I mean, do you have any superstitions personally? Like, do you have any things
I know I do. I know I do. Like, even though I'm like, I'm not superstitious. Like, they're sort of unavoidable. I feel like they're just like kind of part of our mental makeup.
Sure.
I can't think of what they are, like of what any.
I know. I want to think of one of mine right now. I have to.
Should we play the Jeopardy music and then?
If I eat candies or like anything small like that, I have to eat one on either side of my mouth, or else it'll wear out.
That's not a superstition.
It'll wear out one side of my jaw faster.
I think that's just OCD.
No, it would be OCD if I just needed it because it didn't feel right, but it's because I'm worried that there's an imbalance, like an actual imbalance. And there's definitely not. I don't need enough. I eat a lot of M&Ms in my life. I don't need enough to cause a jaw imbalance.
I mean, I take fish oil. God knows if that does a damn thing.
Oh yeah, I guess vitamins could definitely be.
Yeah.
Especially because vitamins, like...
I did the Master Cleanse once before I learned that it was not effective.
Yeah. And the jury's still out on vitamins.
Yeah, I know.
The jury's also still out. Did you know this? This blew my mind. The jury is still out on probiotics.
Oh, I did read that recently.
Probiotics might be like fucking you up. I take a probiotic every morning with my vitamins.
I'm going to continue to perform that cargo cult ritual.
Yeah.
I actually didn't have this on here, but it's like cargo cult is such a part of the Gestalt that there's actually a term called cargo cult programming.
What?
And cargo cult programming it's basically a slur as a programmer. And it means...
Wait, what do you mean a programmer? Like a computer
coder,
programmer?
Like a coder, yeah. And it basically means like if you get accused of being a cargo cult programmer, it means that you've taken whole chunks of code from somewhere and put it in your code base without knowing how it works and just like hoping that it'll work.
That is the most evocative phrase.
Isn't it?
That is a beautiful metaphor. And God bless language for producing those pieces of minuscule art.
I know.
God.
I know. So yeah, I thought it was interesting, like drawing that comparison to athletes, right? Because yes, like it's superstitious and there's no actual causality there, but if it puts you in the right frame of mind to do what you need to do, maybe it's beneficial. And to me, that feels almost exactly what the John Frum cult is to the people of Tana.
Right.
It's not real, but it puts them in the right frame of mind to shake off these yokes of colonialism and renew their society and, you know, have their future sons and daughters become lawyers and doctors and whatnot. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. You know how I was like trying to like look for a theme,
right?
You know, like with Star Citizen.
That's why your episodes are good.
Star Citizen was like the Pascal's dilemma. Right. What if your God died if you didn't feed him? And then in the RSE one, I don't know what the hell was my theme in that one
for Ramtha.
Yeah. Oh, it was about physics and like how crazy quantum mechanics is and that. Yeah. So this one I was like, because I was trying to find my theme in this one, and
this is the only 2 episodes you've done. Well, yeah.
And this one. Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
Damn.
This one I was like, okay, it's going to be about. I think the angle here is statistical correlation, like. You know, people misinterpreting statistics and not understanding how, you know, one thing like correlation doesn't imply causation, and that'll be the thing that I build it around.
Right.
And then as I read more about the actual cargo cults, in particular about John Frum, I was like, wait, that's not the theme. The theme is that I didn't actually know that much about what cargo cults actually were.
Right.
To the people that were there, I knew what I thought about cargo cults, but I didn't know that they like it, particularly in the case of this John Frum thing, were like legit social institutions. Right.
At first blush, it feels like, oh, this is a misguided worship of like Western material goods. Yeah. And really it's this is a return to cultural roots to like remove the shackles of the Western colonizer.
But with like this fascinating Western flavor anyway.
Well, do you remember back many years ago, you and I were tiny children. This is like a conversation we probably had like 10 years ago. I'm not even kidding. And we were talking about, it was the Halcyon days. We were talking about America and what it means to be America and what it means to be American.
I think I remember this.
And you said something about how like...
Yeah, I remember this.
I don't quite remember what you said, but you basically said like there's like America the country, and then there's also like America the spiritual, like what America should be. Yeah, America the idea, and how like, and it doesn't always line up with what the country is doing. I think that, you know, maybe right now we're not in a time where America is lining up with
there's always been 2 Americas.
Idea.
Yeah. And I mean, that's not my idea.
Sure, but yeah. Take the win. You were the first person I heard it from because I was a tiny child. It just kind of feels like when you can really dig down to what like America should be, it's maybe a little bit more in line with this like spirituality that Tana has adapted.
I think that's actually really insightful, and I hadn't
I don't want to say that like they're the real Americans, because that's like really insulting to them. It's more like we as Americans should be relearning what it is to be American by looking at groups like that.
Sure. And actually, from what I understand, there's like some tourism around this now. So like people will actually visit, like especially on February 15th, they will go and visit and like watch
my birthday. Let's go.
I know, we should. That's I think why it appeared up on Atlas Obscura. I had an article about it, is because it's like now it's kind of like a obscure, interesting thing to do.
Oh, okay.
But I think you're right. Like I think, to me, what rings true there is the 2 Americas thing, like the America, the reality of the place,
right?
You know, which is dirty and messy and sometimes good and sometimes not. And then there's like America, the idea, the ideal. Right. And since these folks have, you know, they haven't been to America, so to them, all it is that ideal. All it is that idea, and they see these like optimistic soldiers that come in and, you know, are generous with them, have like racial equality from their perspective. And when they leave, there's no more colonialism. Like, of course, you're going to be like, cool.
Right.
That's dope.
Right.
And then integrate that with your like, you know, I think that like, to me, what that sort of says is like, I think that Americans would want us to return to our customs and be who we are as individuals. Like be who we are, not as individuals, but as our society, be ourselves.
Right.
Which is inspiring.
Right. And to just kind of like actually focus on those like ideals of like freedom and whatever the fuck.
I feel like we should end this one with like you know, like glory, like America. What's that?
You want to sing? America. That's not a song.
Well, America, fuck yeah, we could do that.
No, you can just say America. That's not
That's
a
a
song.
song. No, like, was it America the Beautiful? I don't know the names of these songs. I just know to sing them.
Some patriot you are.
Well, I can sing them.
Go ahead.
No, ain't doing that.
I'm just saying we have a lot to learn from the groups that we have talked about today. We as
I agree.
Americans, and I think it's really interesting to remember that, like, maybe sometimes our version of quote unquote America is not the most American, America the idea.
Yeah, maybe. Which is very interesting.
Hashtag capitalism.
So it's actually...
Hashtag capitalism is a cargo cult.
I believe that I think it was Mr. Wahe, but it was one of these elders. So he actually has personally visited America.
Okay.
This wasn't in my script, but he's personally visited America, and the person that was there interviewing him was basically like, so, like, what was it like? I mean, what, was it? It's not like Shangri-La, and it's not like
right,
because they see America as basically like this sort of like pseudo heaven,
sure,
right? And this guy basically said, like, yeah, it like, he was definitely impressed by, like, the material wealth and all that stuff.
Sure.
But he was also, like, saddened by a lot of the, like, pollution and like inequality and stuff that he saw when he was here.
Right.
And this is like a Pacific Islander, has like zero context for modern culture, and he still came here and saw some of these things. And
right.
It still bugged him, but he didn't go back and be like, "Oh, everything's wrong. Oh, this is all a sham." He's still the village elder. Like, he still is the leader of this faith.
Because that goes back to the whole Two Americas thing. Like, even if we right now don't live up to the ideals that we should, like, those ideals exist even outside of the concept of America. Like, those ideals exist.
Right.
And I think that's, I'm an American person that's only lived here, so my view on this is very limited.
Right.
But I think that makes sense.
Yeah. And I mean, like, the real America and the real anywhere, I don't think will ever live up to ideals, but I think it's important to have those ideals, and something like the John Frum cult, like, illustrates why it's important to have those ideals.
When are we doing America cult or just weird?
Whenever you want.
Is that just going to be the entirety of season 3? Because season 2 is Disney. So season 3
season 2 is
America?
all Disney.
Okay.
Yeah. That, I mean, we probably could get a whole season on, like, the aspects, like, the political culture and the Freemasons that started the country. I don't know.
Capitalism.
Like, it's a whole bunch of stuff.
QAnon. Anti-vax. All the great things we've started.
Oh, God.
Those Pentecostal snakeholders.
Yeah.
What more do you want?
So with that, would you like to speak about the criteria and...
You want me to get my paper out?
Yeah. It's my favorite part of the episode.
All
Tell
right.
me what you think.
Should I remind our listeners of our criteria? I think just go through one by one?
Yeah, just go through them one by one.
Number 1, expected harm towards the individual, socially, physically, etc.
What do you think?
0? None?
In fact,
feels like it's the opposite.
To me, this feels like something
expected
that provides
benefit.
value.
Yeah, it's like the opposite.
Yeah.
This I will need your opinion on, because we have population of cult, which has been a controversial...
Actually, I have a specific note about that, criteria. So can we push that one to the end?
We can, but I do want to note that, like, it's a bit of a controversial criteria. We've had some feedback
exactly
being like...
what my note is.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next one, which is anti-factuality, specifically a closed logical system.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's much of that.
Would it help? Actually, this probably only makes this more confusing, but there's actually been a schism, which I think has since died out.
You love a good schism.
Yeah, schism, to me, that's when you're real. Like, that's when you've made it, is when somebody
That's when you're a religion?
That's when you're real, yeah. So there has been a schism, and I think it's died out. But, I like, from what I got from my readings, it didn't seem like there was a lot of... if you didn't believe in this, or if you were tried to get out, then, like, you were evil and bad and wrong, and things disproving it only makes the belief stronger, or what. There wasn't really a lot of that. I mean, certainly the superstition is not factual, I guess.
Sure. But it's also like, And we've talked about this with other things, and you and I have talked about this with like our own, spiritual things that we do, like, me going to Reiki or whatever. Sometimes it's hard to like parse out in a spiritual belief, like what is an actual belief and what is like a metaphorical belief. Like,
right. What is me believing in magic and what is me doing something that's like metaphorical and effective?
Right.
It's kind of like the athlete example, right?
Right, exactly.
It's like, do athletes actually think that there's like magic going on when they, rub their head 3 times before they got in the pitcher's mound? I don't know. Probably not. But like if it puts you in that frame of mind, that like that winner's frame of mind, that, of expecting to succeed and therefore acting that out, then it can be effective. So if that's what you're saying is true here, then I'd say the anti-factual, I think there's some, but it's very low.
Because it's like that whole thing of like, I guess it's not this is the whole thing. It has me thinking about how, like with the athlete example, like with what we're talking about here, it's almost like your logical, your I don't know, what's another word for logical?
I'd say left-brained, but that was another thing that I read that was actually fake too.
That's not real. Your like evidence-based, logical, like super ego brain basically accessing a way to work with your like unconscious,
like your intuitive and unconscious,
to work with like that non-intellectual logical side of you that very much exists. Like you can't wish your lizard brain away, like you can't wish that like really deep-seated id, unconscious, lizard brain, whatever you want to call it. So maybe some of these rituals and some of these beliefs are just a way to like communicate.
Yeah, I agree.
Between those two parts of yourself.
It's like logic. You can logic your way through something by using like deliberate thought, but like how do you actually have any sort of input into your subconscious?
Right.
And it feels like that's kind of where this stuff comes in, potentially.
Right. Okay, so anti-factuality.
1%.
Sure, low.
Whatever.
It's
small.
low.
Small.
Percentage of life consumed. How much of your time is devoted? I don't know. Can you shed some light on that?
Like, is this to me, like it felt
you're living in this, or is this like church once a week?
I think it's more like church once a week. And even then, like, if you recall from the narrative, it's almost like the religion serves the culture more than the other way around.
Okay.
Right? It's not like the culture serves the religion. Like the culture says like, oh, we got to do X, Y, Z because the religion says. Instead, it's more like the religion says, hey, go back to your cultural stuff that you're doing before. Do that cultural stuff.
Right. It's almost like here's just a little like switch. Like rather than like here's the framework, it's just like here's the signpost that turns you back to the framework. Right.
It's kind of fuzzy. Like. And also, I don't think I did enough research to know whether but I don't think that there's like people that go to, the compound every single day. I don't even think they have compounds. I mean, I don't know.
From what you talked about, it seems like it's similar. It's a similar aspect of life as like a casual like Catholic person might be.
I think you go to church on the
major holidays and maybe you go on some Sundays and you probably pray sometimes and you think about it, but it's not necessarily. You're not moving to T.L. Swan's compound in Costa Rica. Right.
So I would call it fuzzy but low. Yeah.
Okay. Fuzzy but low.
And I think that the Catholic, casual Catholic thing is probably pretty accurate.
Okay.
Without having visited Tana myself.
Right. Remember that we are speaking as people who've only done some light research, not anthropologists who have immersed ourselves in said culture. Ritual.
Ritual, I would say, is right up there. Because that's like the whole thing, right? Like that's why they're known. It's
like the reenactments. It's the
reenactments. It's the uniforms. It's the props. They actually so they used to paint the words USA on their chests, on their bare chests.
Okay.
When they did these ceremonies on February 15th, and apparently I don't remember where they got this from, but like. Apparently some person or group from America donated like a shit ton of military uniforms to them, and now they wear those.
Okay, I want to know who those people are that did that. Who did the donating?
I know.
And why?
I don't know.
That's really interesting.
I know. Sorry, I don't know more about that.
Shit.
Yeah. So I'd say Ritual's high.
Okay, Ritual's up there, and then second to last, because you said you wanted to talk about population, second to last is Charismatic Leader, which, while the leader is potentially fictional, I think is enough of a figure that I would say there is one. For
sure. Yeah, it's weird because it's like, would you call Jesus the charismatic leader of Christianity, or is it the Pope, or at least Catholicism anyway?
Right.
I know not everybody believes in the Pope, excuse me. But, I guess I would say it's Jesus, so in this case it's probably John Frum. But they also have, they have like a village elder guy that, Mr. Wahe, that, so they still have, but he's not like a charismatic leader. He's just like,
I think John Frum's the charismatic leader.
He's just the guy that's in charge right now, yeah.
Plus the name John Frum.
And Mr. Wahe is like super chill too. He's not like, join my cult. He's like, hey, welcome to the island. Do you want to have some kava with me? Anyway, here's our volcano. Like,
sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So expected harm, low. Anti-factuality, low. Percentage of life consumed, low. Ritual and charismatic leader are present. And then you want to talk about population as a criterion. Yeah.
So the weird thing here, so as you mentioned, I think it's a bit of a controversial criteria, because all the other criteria are cult or just weird.
Right.
This criteria is like cult or just religion, right? Because what we're really trying to suss out with this criteria is not anything to do with number of people, right? It's how niche is this? Right. Is this accepted by most of society or rejected by most of society? And if we wanted to be super precise, maybe we should change the criteria to accept versus reject from society, or we could just keep it what it is, so we have like something dramatic to talk about every week. I don't know, but in the case of John Frum, I think if we change it to accepted versus rejected by most of society, then it's clearly on the side of not cult, because it is accepted by most of the society of Tana.
I think I am inclined to agree.
So, cult or just religion?
Yeah, I think that we're back at another cult or just religion. Yeah. Which I think that Teal Swan is way weirder in this situation.
Way.
So I forget how we ended that. We said she was a cult, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing about that too is like last week it felt like the story was, here's a weird thing, and I'm going to start by looking at this weird thing. Oh, it's definitely a cult. And this one was like, well, it's called Cargo Cults. Should this even be on the show?
Right.
It's called a cult up front. And then I looked at it and I was like, oh, wait, that's not.
I'm going to say it's not a cult, and I'm also going to say it's not weird. I'm going to say it's a faith. Well, like it's a cultural.
It's a little weird.
I don't know if it's much weirder than like.
Oh, I'm not saying
other
it's
religions
weirder.
Or even
I'm just saying that it is weird.
Well, if the only two categories in the entire world are cult or just weird, and every religion falls under weird.
That's the podcast.
All right, Kayla. If those are the only two things, then it's just weird.
I think it is both a religion and weird, and I
no. There's only two categories.
Fine, weird, but again, not necessarily as a pejorative, right? Like we don't necessarily mean weird to be bad, but 7,000 miles away in the middle of the goddamn Pacific Ocean, right? You have people raising American flags and doing military drills, and it's a little out of place seeming if you saw that without any other context.
It's novel for us, and it is interesting.
Sure. Well, a lot of things that would be novel for them that wouldn't be weird for us, they would call weird. Yeah, that's fine.
Starbucks is weird.
Starbucks is hella weird.
Yeah.
Starbucks has a cult logo.
Starbucks. Cult are just weird.
Yeah, well, spoilers. I think we actually probably would do them at some point.
I would be afraid. To do that.
Oh, you'd be afraid of Starbucks?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, what's his name might be president soon, so he'd come after.
God, Jesus Christ. Okay. So
on that depressing note,
John Frum, not a cult, just weird to us, and also very interesting. And I'm really glad you picked this topic because me too. That was fascinating and just very different than the preconceived notions I had in my own mind.
Yeah, me too. Well, thank you for joining me on that journey.
Thank you for taking me on that journey.
We'll never actually go to the South Pacific, so...
Why not?
I don't know. No, we'll go for sure. And then we can talk to Mr. Wahe ourselves.
I mean, come on, it's my birthday.
Right. We're definitely going
They celebrate my birthday.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you and listeners as well. And of course, follow us on Twitter as usual.
Instagram, Facebook. What are we?
Culture Just Weird on Facebook. We are at Culture Just Weird on Twitter.
We are at Culture Just Weirdos on Insta. And if you want to email us, we are culturejustweird@gmail.com, which actually...
Please email us.
Reminds me.
Oh, yep.
We got our first listener suggestion.
Yes, and we're definitely going to do it.
And we are definitely going to do it. I'm going to call out our person. I can take it out later if we don't want it. But thank you very much to listener Colleen for turning us on to an incredible organization that I cannot wait for one of us to talk about.
Yeah.
So
super cool.
Listeners, if you're out there, if you have, and this was a hometown group.
Mm-hmm.
So if any of you
groups.
have hometown
Hell
groups,
yeah.
maybe it's a yoga studio that's a little weird, or like a meditation group, or a MLM. Those are my only examples.
That's it. Those are the only things.
Email us, culturejustweird@gmail.com. We will definitely look into it. We will most likely do an episode on it.
Mm-hmm.
And just, again, thank you to Colleen, our listener, for sending us this group. It is fascinating. And we love hearing from folks who are interested in these weird-ass groups in the same way that we are.
Yeah, seriously, it makes our whole day. But yeah, go rate us. Most importantly, go rate us 5 stars on iTunes.
6 5-stars reviews currently.
That's 30 total stars.
So thank you for our 30 stars, listeners. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we really do. This is Chris.
And this is Kayla.
And this has been...
Cult.
Or Just Weird.